Today is Saturday, March 25th, 2017, and today we got to talk about M103. Now, this is a very controversial anti-Islamophobia motion that has been passed by the Canadian House of Commons, and it was presented by a woman of Pakistani origin. She was born in Pakistan, moved to the UK, and then became a Canadian citizen by the name of Iqra Khalid. I'll talk about her in a little bit. But she is, of course, a member of parliament of the Liberal Party in Canada, which is Justin Trudeau's party. Now, Trudeau, of course, is the Prime Minister of Canada. He's extremely liberal. He was the kind of guy that was against this motion or bill or law, something like that. Now, there is a difference between the motion and the law, and I'll get to that also in a little bit. But he was against this thing that would prevent women from wearing head covering garbs like, a burqa or a hijab or niqab or whatever they are. He was against a bill that would ban that when it came to women coming to their Canadian citizenship ceremonies, which I think is kind of crazy because if you're coming to a citizenship ceremony, shouldn't you be showing your face so people know who you are? I mean, if you have an ID card, can that be with a burqa on? Because I'm not really sure how that really works, whether you take your burqa off, take an ID card, but I digress. If you know more about that, let me know in the comments below. But moving right along from that, this bill, M103, is something that this woman, Iqra Khalid, drafted to be against Islamophobia, but it's been touted in the mainstream media up there, the liberal media that is, as something that is against racism and discrimination and also religious persecution. But if it's about religion in general not being discriminated against, then why is the word Islamophobia in there specifically, right? No other obias, no other its, no other isms. There's nothing about anti-Semitism in there. There's nothing about anti-Christianity in there. There's nothing about Taoism, deism, Buddhism, whatever. There's none of those other religions or faith-based things in there specifically except for Islam. And Islam is not defined very well. Matter of fact, this woman, Iqra Khalid, was questioned by reporters as to why it was not clearly defined in the motion.
Do you ever think that you could have allayed the Conservatives' concerns by putting a definition of Islamophobia between a couple of commas in that motion?
I'm really looking forward to the committee making that conclusion.
But you haven't answered my question. Do you ever think you could have allayed their concerns by just...
I don't think so, no.
Why not?
Any more questions?
Why won't you answer my question?
I'm interested in that answer.
Yeah, we want to know that. What was your question?
So why wouldn't you have felt that you could have allayed their concerns by just putting a definition in the text of the motion? Put it between a couple of commas?
It was a really collaborative effort amongst all Canadians and amongst all parliamentarians, and I was not able to find consensus. And like I've said before, I think I've said before as well that a lot of grassroots organizations came forward, a lot of MPs came forward and consulted with me on this motion and really changing the words of the motion, to which so many Canadians and members of parliament were standing for. It just didn't make any sense. So I'm really happy that the vote today has shown positive support for this motion, and I'm really looking forward to the committee taking on this study.
But you had a very clear definition of Islamophobia.
And I had meant to put it on the record in my speech in the House, and I'm sure that you can get those records.
Absolutely. So why not put it into the motion if it would have alleviated some of the fears of some of the members opposite you?
Like I said, this is the wording of the motion was something that we as grassroots organizations, as Canadians at large, as members of parliament put together, and really changing the wording of the motion would have watered it down. And I think that the committee can really look into this if this is an issue.
And you see how standoffish she was being. You saw what her reaction was when that guy answered the question. It's like, hey, why not define what Islamophobia is in the actual motion? Why can't you put that in there? And by the way, I guess the reporter guy was saying that you had told people before what Islamophobia is in a very clear and succinct way, but she wanted to dodge that. It doesn't make any sense. It's like, okay, if you were able to define it very clearly, if you're the person that drafted this motion and you know what Islamophobia is, why couldn't you put that in the actual motion itself? She was trying to dodge that question because the reason why Islamophobia is left very vague and very ambiguous is because this is not the end. This is just the beginning. This is the tip of the spear, right? This is like a small pebble that rolls down a mountain and then accumulates a bunch of snow and becomes a gigantic boulder of snow that can level a whole city. That's what this is. It's just the beginning. It's called Sharia creep. And shout out to Faith Goldie from Rebel Media for giving me that term. It's what eventually brings in Sharia law. Like, I make this very clear. In the motion, this is not an actual law. And the liberal media up there will tell you that. They'll be very specific and they'll harp on the fact, oh, it's not a law. It can't come into action today. Yes, that's very true. But if someone says it's not a law and they in the conversation right there, they're being very misleading. They're not being honest, because this is just the beginning. Laws will eventually come from this if the government intends to enforce what is in the actual motion. And I'll post the motion on the screen before you can read it. It says, well, the government should, basically take action to prevent Islamophobia, racism. How do you do that? How does the government do that if they do not enact laws? That is their only power to really get anything done in an effective way, right? That's the only way they're going to be able to get things done. Maybe they can try to re-educate kids when they go to school, but that also must be a law. It must be a law that says you will use these textbooks. You will use this Islamo positive language in your classroom. That is also a law if they decide to go that route. But what they'll probably end up doing is restricting free speech. And that is a big thing that Canadians are worried about. Even Canadians that come from different countries like Iran and Pakistan, where you have Sharia law right now today.
Yeah, I support freedom of speech. Never I thought that even in Canada I should support one day of freedom of speech. Because I remember that when I was in Iran, I went to jail because of lack of freedom of speech in my own country. And really I got shocked because Sunni Muslims criticize Shia Muslims. Shia Muslims criticize Sunni Muslims. What is Islamophobia? As a Muslim, I am totally against this bill. And I stand for freedom of speech.
I'm a political refugee from Iran. I've been to prison. I've been under Islamic law. And I know how it starts and I know how it ends. And it always starts with the, for some reason, unity of left and Islamists, and it scares me. So I came here to be free. I chose Canada as my second home to be live in a free country. And I'm beginning to get really scared because the way things are going, it looks like they're going to basically appease Islamists just to not raise any ruckus or something. They're just going to appease them step by step, and they're not going to stop. They see it as a sign of weakness, so they're going to take more and more, and I'm against that. I believe Canada should be free, and freedom of speech is something that nobody can take away from people.
And you saw what he was talking about. You saw what the guy that was a political prisoner was talking about. And by the way, I have much more of those reactions. I didn't want to take their whole video. I placed the entire video. I got those two from in the description box below. But you see what he was talking about. He was like, look, I come from Iran. I was a political prisoner. I don't want to come to Canada and deal with the same thing I dealt with when I was in Iran. I don't want this to become a Sharia positive or a Sharia recognizing country. That is what I came from in the Middle East. I don't want that here. And I respect them for coming out and saying that, because I know that can be very difficult to do. But I assume they think that in Canada, they should be safe from that. That's why they came to Canada. That's why they came to a free country in the West. That's what we represent. United States, Canada, we're supposed to be bastions of free speech. But the Liberal Party up there, the actual Liberal Party, and the Liberal Party here, which is the Democrat Party, and some of the right as well, they seem to be against that which makes us liberal. It makes us liberated. The actual liberal principles of free speech, being able to say what's in your mind, that is now being squashed, and it's being squashed with basically a form of Sharia that will eventually come if this motion is to be enforced in any kind of way, right? And the thing about that is it will not help Muslims. That's a key thing that people are missing. Because in the Middle East, in Iran, Pakistan, etc., places where you have Sharia law, the Sharia law, the anti-blasphemy law, which just basically is if you speak out negatively against Prophet Muhammad, etc., you may be stoned to death, you may be in prison, etc. That goes on over there. And it really affects mostly Muslims, because think about it like this. What if you live in a country where you have Sunni and Shia Muslims and they're fighting? Now, if you live in a Sunni dominant area and you are a Shia Muslim speaking against a Sunni, well, you're going to be put in jail or probably killed if you're the Shia person in that situation. Or even worse, like let's say you are a Sunni Muslim in a Sunni majority area speaking against Sunni Islam. You may be also put into jail or killed. Now, I say it's worse. You know, of course, loss of human life because of religion is bad across the board equally. But the situation is worse because you got basically your own people killing you for speaking about your own people in a critical way. That is what can eventually come to the West if things like this don't get nipped in the bud. It's like the guy said earlier. We know how it happens. The left aligns with the radicals, and then they start to enact motions like this. Even though, again, I will say, because I don't want anybody to say I'm fake news or anything like that, I will say this motion, M103, is not a law, but it can lead to laws because it has recommendations to the government to be able to do certain things and to prevent certain things from happening, so-called Islamophobia. It can lead to laws which will become the equivalent or similar or a little bit less effective than Sharia law. It's going to be right around that. That is the actual end game. And I think that's why the woman, Iqra Khalid, intentionally left the definition of the word Islamophobia open, because what happens when they're trying to actually make laws based upon this motion? Because what happens when you got people in the room, they're making a law, it's going to be people in their ear, you know, the cleric over here, some kind of imam over here that says, you know what? I feel like Islamophobia is when you speak out against Islam in any kind of way. It doesn't matter if you're talking about the radical extremists. It doesn't matter if you say something like this. If you say, I love Muslims, I love Islam, but there is a problem with radical Islam. If you say that, you still might get locked up or you may face a penalty or something like that. It's bad enough right now, just the social contract that exists among people in the West, where if you speak conservatively in your workplace, you may get fired. If you say you like Donald Trump, you may get fired. You see, that's bad enough. But then you're going to add a whole new layer on top of that when you have something that's recommended to the government to basically make what something said in the workplace that may get you fired. It may also make that illegal. You see, that's crazy. And if something like that happens, we're finished. The United States, Canada, the Western world, the free world, we're done. And then what's going to be in this place is something that is much worse than the liberals can anticipate. And I'm going to close with this. I don't understand why the liberals are so pro-Islam. I don't get it because, you know, one thing that I know for certain is that the Middle East is not the same thing as the West. The music is different. The culture is different. The food is different. Everything is different. When those cultures clash, one will conquer the other, and it won't be liberalism. They'll be the first ones to get conquered. I feel like they want to get conquered. It's weird. I won't go too deep into that rabbit hole, so I'm going to cut it short right there. So if you're in Canada, if you're Canadian by birth, you live somewhere else, if you've been to Canada recently, if you understand Canadian politics, let me know in the comments below. What do you think about this situation? Do you think that this is something that has been going on for a long time in Canada? It's just now reached the mainstream level? Do you think there's anything that can be done to prevent this from happening anymore or going any further? Like I said, it's kind of bad up there because you had 201 MPs and members of parliament that voted for this motion, M103, and only 91 that voted against it. And you got Justin Trudeau, the world's biggest liberal, the world's biggest lunatic when it comes to that kind of ideology. He's the prime minister of Canada. Do you think that this can be fixed if Trudeau is voted out the next time you have a chance? Do you think that Canadians in general as a whole won't vote him out? Do they want him to be in there? Is the general population in Canada pretty much on the side of the liberals? Whatever you think about that, let me know in the comments below. And to everyone else, what do you think? Do you think this is a good thing or a bad thing? Now, I assume everybody pretty much say it's a bad thing for obvious reasons, because you can't have these kind of motions that are introduced, because it creates a slippery slope where if you try to enforce anything in the motion with the law, that's when you start to get into heavy censorship. That's when you start to get into people being jailed for speaking out against Islam, which is basically an anti-blasphemy law. You effectively change your culture from Western to Eastern or Middle Eastern within a few years. I don't think anybody in the West wants that. If it's a good thing, I challenge you to tell me why. Because like I said, even Muslims are getting punished by the anti-blasphemy law in the Middle East right now. Like I say, if you are a Sunni speaking against a Shia or the other way around, you could be jailed or killed. If you are a Muslim in general in a Muslim majority area of your same group, you can be jailed or killed for speaking out against it. I mean, people like Ayaan Hirsi Ali over there in Somalia almost being killed for converting. Is that what you want in the West? Whatever your comments are, let me know in the comments below. And that's all I got to say for this video. If you like what you heard, please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. Peace.